Nyki here with the Canton Museum of Art presenting Museum to Go Takeout. If you haven't been tuning in with us every Wednesday at noon on either our Canton Museum of Art Facebook page or the YouTube channel for the Canton Museum of Art, then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Museum to Go. Museum to Go is a 4th grade outreach program that works with students all across Stark County to create meaningful experiences where they view art from our permanent collection, and they also get to talk about art and create their own artwork based on that art. Today, we're going to be learning about how we can work with lines and angles to make different exciting art pieces. We're going to be discussing some art from an exhibition that happened at the Canton Museum of Art, and the exhibition was called Everyday People. You'll notice when I show you in a little bit some art from the exhibition that lines and angles have been used to create visual interest throughout these art pieces. I'm going to be using a Sharpie, a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can just use the straight side of a piece of paper or a book. And I'm also going to be using some crayons. I have glitter crayons, but you can use any kind of crayons that you'd like. Everyday People was an exhibition that featured people doing everyday things. And you can see in this image called Log Milk House by Martha Burlingham that there are some people doing some things like hanging out with a dog. We have some children playing in the yard. We have someone churning butter. It looks like there is a clothesline with clothes on it. And I thought that this image was a really good image to start with, not only to talk about everyday people, but also to talk about lines. You'll notice in this image, like the other images I will show you, that there are many lines. First of all, I want to point out the line that is the little road that the dog is walking on. It's kind of leading to the woman churning butter, and if you look at how it goes through the image, it almost looks like outside of the image it connects to the hill in the background. That hill and the other line going through the picture with the road creates what's called an acute angle. We'll learn a little bit about angles later on, but for now, just remember that this creates an angle. Now, there are also lines on the milk house. There are horizontal lines, which mean that there are lines going across the image, and those are the lines of the logs. We're going to look at another picture, and we're going to talk about lines that are maybe a little less clear than some of the lines in Log Milk House. In this piece called Street People by Clyde Singer, you'll notice that there are a lot of lines, but maybe they're a little bit unclear. Some of the lines are more clear than others. Those would be the lines on the bricks on the storefront. They would also be the line on the top of the buildings and some of the lines and angles making up the windows that you see in the background. They're getting smaller as they go back, and that's creating perspective. You can also notice, if you look really hard, that everyone's body is kind of slanted in a different way. Some people are walking and their legs are creating angles and lines. Some people are standing differently than other people, leaning over. Some people are straight up and down. So if you think of those bodies as different lines, and you start to kind of look at how maybe the arms of some people are pointing toward other people, it starts to bring your eye around the whole picture. Lines and angles can do a lot to bring our eye around the whole picture and make sure that we see everything. This next image I'm going to show you is all about lines and angles and how your eye can move around an image. And this one definitely has some clear lines. In fact, it's even called Lines. Let's check it out. In this image called Lines by Robert Vickery, you'll see that there is a child drawing many lines on the ground with chalk. You can also notice that there are some intersecting lines where it looks like the sidewalk is meeting each other. There are some very interesting lines made by obtuse angles in this circle in the back, and there are other lines going all around the figure. We're going to talk about those obtuse angles that I just mentioned, and also a bunch of different types of lines that maybe you've already learned about, but maybe you haven't. Let's get started. In the diagram I have here, you can see some different types of lines. Parallel lines are lines that run like railroad tracks next to one another and never intersect. Intersecting lines are two lines that meet and cross each other at a single point. A vertex is a good vocabulary word to know. That's a place where two lines' ends meet. You'll see many vertexes in the next slides when we talk about different types of angles. Each angle that you see here, an acute angle, a right angle, and an obtuse angle, are made by two lines that meet at a vertex, like we talked about in the last slide. An acute angle is an angle that is less than 90 degrees. I like to think of acute as something that is cute, and sometimes we think of small things as things that are very cute. An obtuse angle is an angle that is larger than 90 degrees. That's kind of like if you were leaning back really far in a reclining chair. Your body would be at an obtuse angle. A right angle is an angle that is at 90 degrees, and a right angle looks like an L. When you think about angles, what do you think about? Comment below and let me know when you see things that are at different angles. Maybe you're thinking of where two walls meet and how a lot of the time that's a 90-degree angle. If we had a protractor in front of us right now, we would be able to measure some angles that we see in our world around us. If you have a protractor, go ahead and check out some angles that you see in your world right now. Now that we've learned about lines and angles, I'd like you to look again at this image called Lines, Lines by Robert Vickery and see what types of angles and lines you see in this image. Go ahead and pause the video to comment below and let me know what types of angles you see and where they are. Now that we've had a chance to look at lines, lines for ourselves, I'll show you a couple of angles that I saw. I saw this acute angle on the left. Did you see that angle and notice it? Comment below and let me know. Here, I've noticed two perpendicular lines in the image, lines, lines. These perpendicular lines meet at a perfect right angle. Did you notice these perpendicular lines? Let me know below. Maybe you could also tell me some other lines that you've seen in this image and different angles that you can see. I think that we should get started on making a project with lines of our own. Let's do it. Today, we're going to be making a coloring page, and I'm starting with my Sharpie. What I'm going to do is, we just talked about angles, so I'm going to start by making an acute angle, and I'm going to make a dot in the middle of my paper on one side. You can start your acute angle anywhere on your paper. I'm going to go all the way across my paper so that I go to the end, and then I'm going to go across. Here, I have a really small angle. It's acute. I'm going to be making an abstract composition. Abstract means it's something that doesn't necessarily look like anything else. I'm going to make a parallel line to one of my lines on my acute angle. I'd like it if you could make a parallel line too. Now a ruler might be good for this. I'm going to turn my paper 1 turn clockwise. You can turn your paper 1 turn clockwise too. I'm going to go off of my angle and I'm going to just make a right angle. So it should look like a little L. With that, I'm going to make a perpendicular line. I think I'm just going to make it up here. I'm going to turn my paper 2 turns counterclockwise. 1 turn, 2 turns. I don't think we've made an obtuse angle yet. I'm going to make an obtuse angle that goes over other things on my paper. I'm going to start by doing this. If you have a protractor, you can make sure that you make an actual really big obtuse angle if you want, or one that looks almost like a right angle but is just slightly obtuse. I don't have a protractor, so I'm just using my ruler, but I know that that is an obtuse angle. I have a bunch of different places now that I can start coloring in if I want to. I think I want to make a couple more lines. Now that I have all of my lines on my paper, you can see I have perpendicular lines, I have parallel lines, I have other lines that are making angles, I have right angles and obtuse and acute angles. I'm going to start coloring in some parts. Like I said, this is going to be an abstract coloring page. Now my paper has a little bit of a texture on it, so it's not going to look perfect when I color, but that's okay. Now you can see that I'm deciding to color all of my different little sections created by the lines and angles that I made with different colors. You could choose to do this a couple different ways. You could choose to explore the primary colors like we talked about in the last episode and just color these red, yellow, and blue. You could do what I'm doing and you could color them a bunch of different colors. You could even choose 5 different shades of purple or green or blue and make what's called a monochromatic color scheme, which is where you use different tints and shades of the same color. What are you doing for your project? Comment below and let me know what colors you're using, and if you chose any specific colors or if you're just choosing colors at random like me. Have you ever seen a piece of abstract art? What did it look like? Have you ever made a piece of abstract art before? So now that I've colored most of my picture, I'm starting to think about how cool this picture would look as a mural. A mural is a piece of art that is painted right onto a wall, and maybe you've seen some murals around your city. I know there are plenty of murals in Canton, and we'll start to explore some of those murals and what they look like in a little bit. If you were to make this picture that you're making right now a mural for a bunch of people to see, and they were to drive by it, and maybe they'd be in Canton or maybe they'd be somewhere around Canton, where would you like to see your own artwork on a big wall for other people to see? I think that I might like to see my artwork on the side of the Canton Museum of Art. Could be fun. I'm going to leave a couple of these boxes that I have created using my lines and angles the color of the paper, and I'm going to do that because I think this color of the paper looks kind of nice with some of the other colors that I've chosen. So now that I'm done with my picture, I think that I can really start to see what this might look like on a wall around my city. I can turn this a bunch of different ways and kind of see which way I think I like it the best. I kind of like it with this guy pointing down. Maybe when you were making your picture, I know you turned it a bunch of different ways so that you could decide which way you would make different lines and different shapes out of your angles. Maybe you had something in mind from the very start for how this was going to look. And maybe you just kind of went with it like me and ended up with something that you decided you could turn and twist and change at the end. Where do you think that this picture would look good in the city of Canton? I know that I had said something about maybe the side of the Canton Museum of Art, but I'm also thinking about how this could look kind of cool on the downtown Mugswigs, and I love their chai tea. Comment below and tell me where you think that this would look good. Now that we've discussed our art and we've discussed murals a little bit, we're going to look at some murals from around Canton, and we're going to talk about lines and different angles and things that we can see in the murals that we're looking at. But we're also going to talk about how murals help the community and what that means for you when you're looking at a mural. Maybe you associate your neighborhood with a specific piece of art that you've seen because there's a mural there. Or maybe you think of a specific mural when somebody mentions the word Canton. So there are many different reasons why you could feel connected to a mural. We're going to talk about all of those. All right, let's check out some murals. I'm going to start with a mural called Greetings from Canton by Victor Ving and Lisa Beggs. This mural is one that I've seen a lot of times. It's on Cleveland Avenue Northwest, and it's right near 4th Street. Have you ever seen this mural before? You'll notice in this mural that the artists use lines on the bottom of the word Canton, and also the lines going up to the McKinley, and they also work with lines of the landscape. Like I said before, when we look at a mural, sometimes it makes us feel connected to the place where the mural is. In this mural, I see a little bit of the Palace Theater. I see the Pro Football Hall of Fame and a nod to Buzzbin. The McKinley is also in there, one of our museum partners. And I see some things that make me feel like Canton is a wonderful place to be. Sometimes when we look at murals, they transform our neighborhoods from places that just make us think about where we live to places that make us think about how where we live has so much to offer for us. I'm wondering if you have ever seen a mural before that has transformed the way that you think about your community. In this next image, Street Strolling, which is located at the Arts Academy of Summit, there are a lot of different parts of the Canton community represented in the mural. There's a sculpture that's outside of the Canton Museum of Art. There's also a sign that says Stark County District Library. I see mosaics and I see a bunch of children standing outside of all of these wonderful places in their community. As a child, or maybe someone who grew up in Canton, I'm wondering if this mural makes you feel like you are a part of your community. I'm wondering if you're remembering going to some of these places or seeing some of these landmarks represented in the mural, and if it's making you feel like you're glad that you come from Canton or that you live here. Please let me know below in the comments if you've been to any of the places that you can see in this mural. While this image is not completely abstract and shows a lot of things that we have seen all around the community, there are parts of this image that are a little more abstract than the last mural we saw. These parts would be that there are people and the people don't necessarily have faces. That can make us think about how any of the people in this image could be us. Also, you can see that all of the parts in the background and the places that these people are connected to one another. And this is not just because they wanted to show a bunch of different places in the community, but it also helps that the line of the rope that everyone is holding is going from place to place to place. It makes us feel like maybe each place is tied together. We're going to look at one more mural, and this next mural is important because it shows the history of Canton, Ohio, and also the history of American football. This mural by Paul Collins called Reintegration of Pro Football, 1946, is located at 3rd Street and Cleveland Avenue Northwest. This image shows football players in front of the American flag, and we talked before about how lines can add visual interest to an image. You'll notice, as before in Street People by Clyde Singer, that the football players' bodies are creating lines. They're also standing in front of what looks like the American flag, and the American flag has these horizontal lines. Last but not least, this image is hung by poles that go up and down, splitting the image into panels. These poles create visual interest because it makes us think of each part of the picture as its own smaller picture. I mentioned before how this mural helps us to understand the history of Canton. In September of 1946, Marion Motley, a football player who had previously played for McKinley High School, played his first game with the Cleveland Browns. Marion Motley, along with his teammate Bill Willis, were the first African American football players to play in the National Football League since the 1890s, and this was a huge deal. The fact that Marion Motley helped to change the game of American football forever, and that he's from Canton, is a very important part of the history of Canton. The fact that the Pro Football Hall of Fame is here in Canton is very important to helping people understand Canton's legacy as a place where many very important football players have come from, and also a place that is important to the social and political issues associated with football. Now, we've talked about some murals that are in some very different places around the city. Again, I want you to think about where you would put your mural if you could paint a mural anywhere in the city. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and also tune in if you'd like to join in on a live commenting session every Wednesday from noon to 1 on our Facebook page. Also, check out the Canton Museum of Art on Instagram. Check out the hashtag museum2go and tag your own work with it so that you can see what people all around you are making during this quarantine time. And please let me know in the comments below where you would put your mural. Thank you for spending your wonderful Wednesday with me, and I will see you next wonderful Wednesday. Bye.